We thought a cross-country road trip would be the perfect honeymoon, but after the first night, we realized we weren't just being followed. We were being hunted. Emma and I decided to do something different for our honeymoon, a road trip across the country. No fancy resorts, no crowded beaches, just the open road and each other. We packed up the car, mapped out our route, and hit the highway. The first day was amazing. We stopped at little diners, took photos at roadside attractions, and sang along to our favorite songs. But that night, things took a turn. We pulled into a motel in the middle of nowhere, one of those old, run-down places with flickering neon signs. The clerk at the front desk was odd. He didn't say much, just handed us the key and stared at us with this blank expression. Our room was at the end of the building, and as we walked there, I noticed a black SUV parked nearby. It didn't seem out of place, but something about it made me uneasy. That night, I woke up to the sound of tires crunching on gravel. I peeked through the curtains and saw the SUV driving slowly past our room. I told myself it was nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. The next morning, we hit the road early. But as we drove, I kept seeing the same black SUV in the rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe they were heading the same way. But after hours of driving, it was still there, always keeping the same distance. Emma noticed it too. "Why is that car following us?" she asked. I tried to stay calm. "It's probably nothing," I said, but deep down I knew something was wrong. We stopped at a gas station and the SUV pulled in behind us. I got out, trying to act casual, but the driver stayed in the car. I couldn't see their face, just a shadow behind the tinted windows. That night we stayed at another motel. This time I made sure to park the car where I could see it from our room. Around midnight I heard it again, the sound of tires on gravel. I looked out the window and saw the SUV parked across the street, its headlights off. The next day it got worse. The SUV started getting closer, tailgating us on empty stretches of road. I tried to lose them, taking random turns and speeding up, but they always stayed right behind us. By the third day, we were both on edge. Emma was crying, begging me to call the police, but we were in the middle of nowhere with no cell service. That's when the SUV started honking, long, aggressive blasts that made my heart race. Finally, I pulled over, ready to confront them. But as soon as I got out of the car, the SUV sped off, kicking up dust and gravel. That's when I noticed something on our windshield, a note tucked under the wiper. It said, "You shouldn't have stopped." We drove straight to the nearest town and called the police, but they couldn't do much. No license plate, no description of the driver, just a black SUV that had vanished into thin air. We cut the trip short and flew home. We thought it was over. But a week after we got home, the SUV showed up again. This time, it was parked outside our house. I called the police immediately, but by the time they arrived, it was gone. They checked the area, even reviewed our security cameras, but there was no trace of it. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. Someone had thrown a rock through our bedroom window. Attached to it was a note. "You can't run forever." That was the final straw. We packed up our things, moved to a new city, and changed our phone numbers. We even sold the car, just in case. But sometimes, late at night, I'll hear a car idling outside our house. And when I look out the window, there's nothing there, just the sound of tires on gravel, fading into the distance. If you ever take a road trip, keep an eye on your rearview mirror, because sometimes the scariest things aren't in front of you. They're right behind. We thought it was the perfect honeymoon until we realized we weren't alone in that cabin. And whatever was there, it didn't want us to leave. It was supposed to be the best week of our lives. Sarah and I had been planning this honeymoon for months, a cozy cabin in the woods, miles away from anyone else. Just us, the trees, and the sound of the river nearby. It was perfect. At least, that's what we thought. The first night was magical. We lit a fire, opened a bottle of wine, and laughed about how we'd finally made it. Married. Together. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to this sound. It was faint at first, like something brushing against the door. Sarah was still asleep, so I tried to ignore it. Probably just a branch or an animal, right? But it didn't stop. The scratching grew louder, more deliberate. I got up, peeked through the curtains, but it was pitch black outside. Nothing there. I told myself it was just the wind and went back to bed. The next morning, Sarah asked if I'd heard anything. I lied and said no. I didn't want to freak her out. But that night, it happened again. This time, the scratching was louder, more aggressive. Sarah woke up, her eyes wide with fear. "What is that?" she whispered. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the door. When I opened it, there was nothing there, just the cold night air and the sound of the trees swaying. But as I closed the door, I noticed something, deep gouges in the wood, like something had been clawing at it. And they were high, too high to be an animal. Sarah wanted to leave right then, but I convinced her to stay. "It's probably just some drunk hiker messing around," I said, but even as I said it, I didn't believe it. The third night was the worst. The scratching turned into knocking, 3 sharp raps like someone was testing the door. Sarah was shaking, begging me to call the police, but we had no signal out there, no way to call for help. Then came the voice. It was low, almost a whisper, but clear enough to make my blood run cold. "Let me in." I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and stood in front of the door, my heart pounding. Sarah was crying behind me, clutching my arm. The voice came again, louder this time. "Let me in," I shouted. "Go away." And the knocking stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then laughter, soft, mocking laughter that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. We didn't sleep that night. As soon as the sun came up, we packed our things and got the hell out of there. But before we left, something caught my eye. A loose floorboard near the fireplace. I pried it up, and what I found still haunts me. Polaroid photos, dozens of them. Couples just like us, smiling in front of the cabin. But as I flipped through them, the smiles turned to fear. Some of the photos were blurry, like they'd been taken in a panic. And the last one, it was us. Sarah and me, asleep in bed, taken just hours earlier. We never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I hear that scratching at my door, and I wonder, did we really leave whatever was in that cabin behind? If you enjoyed this story and want more spine-chilling tales, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, some nightmares begin the moment you stop watching. Sleep tight, and I'll see you in the next video.